Hello, welcome to another Wednesday of Spiritualism and Fire. Today I want to talk about divine intervention, and I have a strange history with divine intervention. I didn't actually realize how much I had going on in my life from that perspective until I slowed down, shut out the world, and started looking back and looking back. And I could see that every time my world fell apart and came back together, that was divine intervention. Every time I looked at a situation and said, wow, that was a blessing in disguise, that was divine intervention. Every time that I have worked way too hard for something, sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, that was divine intervention saying that is not for me. Now, I've worked for everything, but there is a difference between working for something and working way too hard for something with no progress, with no results, just working, and it actually isn't working. So like I said, I had to look back. And I said before that, there have been times when my family has been very, very like 11th hour down and a door would open. That you can kind of see easier than when it's divine intervention tearing your world apart. But when it comes back together, if you honestly look at it and think from a perspective of gratitude, you can see how that was a blessing in disguise. The biggest, brightest example I have, Veterans Day, 11/11/2024, I got hit by a truck while I was at work. I was walking in a crosswalk and I got hit by a truck. How would that be divine intervention? Well, I was working in a job and I did not like the boss that I had. He absolutely hated the fact that I was a female working this job. But we were required to put in about 55 hours a week, not counting Saturdays. The job was very strenuous, so I could not, how am I going to do a job interview? How am I going to do all of those things you have to do to find a job? I have to get there in the morning, I get into a truck, and we go to whatever site we're going to. So it's not like I can say, hey, at this time I need to take like an hour to do this, or I need to go and take an hour and a half to go do that. No, you're either there or you're not there. There is no, if you have a doctor's appointment, you have to take the day. It's how it goes. So I kind of got into this again, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. I was making really good money. I was too exhausted to do anything. I was too exhausted. I would get up, go to work. It would take me an hour to get to work, an hour to get home, go to bed, rinse, repeat for months. And, how do I get out of this situation? I can't just quit a job. I have a home, I have a son, I have insurance and electric bills. How am I, I'm stuck. And I'm walking in a crosswalk and bam, I don't even remember the accident. I remember being on the ground wondering how am I on the ground? Like, I don't understand what's going on right now. So I took a week off and then I decided to go back to work because, I'm looking it all up and workman's comp is only 60% of your wage. And I'm like, I can't live off of 60%. I don't, I have to go back to work. So I did. I went back to work and I was at work for about a month and my entire body seized up. Like, you're done. You are done. So I finished out that day and I was done. Well, that 60%, now that I wasn't paying the gas to go an hour to work and an hour back on toll highways, so you're talking about almost $200 a month just in tolls to get back and forth to work. You take that out. You take out the gas. You take out a whole lot of things. And actually, the 60%, I wound up having more free cash than when I was working. Because 60%, when you add in all the overtime I was making for working 55 plus hours a week, it was actually it wasn't a great amount, but it was a decent amount. It was enough of an amount that it paid the bills with more left over than when I was working, not being exhausted. And it gave me time when I realized that, maybe I can do, I might not be able to do this job right now, but I might be able to do, hey, this job over here or that job over there. It gave me a window. I'm actually still on workman's comp from that. And it's been 6 months. That's going to be extended. So it opened the door to where I could be more selective on the next path that I wanted to take while I'm making the decision of either going back to the job that I got hit at or job over here or job over there. I could be selective. I have money coming in. It's hard-earned money, but it's money coming in. So, yes, it is hard to wrap my mind around the fact that I look at getting hit by a truck that damn near killed me as divine intervention, but that's exactly what it was. It freed me. It freed me. So, how can you be more clear? So I would not have understood it had I not have already started looking back and understanding that there is something greater, that there was a force out there that was opening that door at the 11th hour, that every time my world collapsed, that it would come together just a little bit better, that it would change my attitude either a little bit worse to force me to want to be better, or would just make it measurably a little bit better and a little bit better. And now that I understand what it is, I'm able to see it way more easy than what it used to take. So I would like to hear comments from your experience with divine intervention. I'm very interested to hear different stories of how you figured out that divine intervention was taking place in your life. What have they saved you from? What have they forced you to save yourself from? Because by now, if you're my age, you already know ain't nobody coming to save you but your spirit guides or your angels and your own self. Sorry, a loud truck. But that's what I have. I'm sitting outside. I live in Florida. The rain is rolling in. And when you watch the rain roll in Florida, it is amazing. You get more rain in Florida in an hour than the state I lived in before. It could rain for a solid week and we would get less rain than how much rain Florida will dump, like I said, in an hour. It is beautiful and it is amazing. So I apologize for the traffic, but it is freaking rolling in and it's going to be amazing. So anyway, thank you all very, very, very much for tuning in. Please put your stories in the comments. I would love to hear them. I would love to read them, draw inspiration from them. Maybe you're seeing divine intervention in different ways, so I can learn how it works in your life to help me learn these different things in my life. And as always, please like, subscribe, do all that stuff. And let's educate each other. Let's learn from each other. Let's win at this thing called life. So anyway, See you next Wednesday. Much love. Bye.